How did life today become consumed with modern conveniences, propaganda and advertising all around us, and simply way too much stuff? The originator of civil disobedience and a sharp critic of where society was headed, Henry David Thoreau cast a spotlight on how we got to where we are in his 1854 Walden.
On the whole, I think that it cannot be maintained that dressing has in this or any country risen to the dignity of an art. At present, men make shift to wear what they can get. Like shipwrecked sailors, they put on what they can find on the beach, and at little distance, whether of space or time, laugh at each other's masquerade. Every generation laughs at the old fashions, but follows religiously the new. We are amused at beholding the costume of Henry VIII, as much as if it was that of the king and queen of the Cannibal Islands.
For here, ancestors can be gods, and death can be caused by ghosts or deadly sorcerers.
All costume off a man is pitiful or grotesque. It is only the serious eye peering from and the sincere life passed within it which restrain laughter and consecrate the costume of any people. When the soldier is hit by a cannonball, rags are as becoming as purple.
People like these earn their living by doing things which other people want, instead of making things.
The childish and savage taste of men and women for new patterns keeps how many shaking and squinting through kaleidoscopes that they may discover the particular figure which his generations require today.
The group of tall buildings at Rockefeller Center is almost like another city. Many of these buildings are occupied by radio and television studios, advertising agencies, and insurance companies.
The manufacturers have learned that this taste is merely whimsical. Of two patterns which differ only by a few threads more or less of a particular color, the one will be sold readily, the other lie on the shelf, though it frequently happens that after the lapse of a season the latter becomes the most fashionable.
In Paris, Estoril shows his spring and summer collection, highlighting slim Satan Afghan pants worn under silk tunics, soft, elegant, and fluid.
Comparatively, tattooing is not the hideous custom which it is called. It is not barbarous merely because the printing is skin-deep and unalterable.
You can make your family's life much brighter. You will find your work much lighter. Make life sweet, it's hard to beat it. What a thrill to be so free when you live electrically.
Most men appear never to have considered what a house is, and are actually, though needlessly poor, all their lives because they think that they must have such a one as their neighbors have. As if one were to wear any sort of coat which the tailor might cut out for him, or gradually leaving off palm leaf hat or cap of woodchuck skin, complain of hard times because he could not afford to buy him a crown. It is possible to invent a house still more convenient and luxurious than we have, which yet all would admit that man could not afford to pay for. Shall we always study to obtain more of these things, and not sometimes to be content with less? Shall the respectable citizen thus gravely teach, by precept and example?
Like most people of the Middle East, Mustafa wants the benefits of mechanized civilization.
The necessity of the young man's providing a certain number of superfluous glow shoes and umbrellas and empty guest chambers for empty guests before he dies? Why should not our furniture be as simple as the Arabs or the Indians?
There is still the old system of land ownership, which sometimes requires the tenants to pay 80% of their crop for the privilege of working the owner's land.
And when the farmer has got his house, he may not be the richer but the poorer for it, and it may be the house that has got him. For our houses are such unwieldy property that we are often imprisoned rather than housed in them. And the bad neighborhood to be avoided is our own scurvy
By
selves.
1920, more people lived in cities than lived in rural areas. And during the next 10 years, they continued to flock in.
I know one or two families at least in this town who for nearly a generation have been wishing to sell their houses in the outskirts and move into the village, but have not been able to accomplish it, and only death will set them free.
What has happened to our cities? Have they grown from the small crossroads towns of 150 years ago? Perhaps down near the river a factory was built. The town grew. A ring of residences circled the central business and industry. Things got too crowded. People built their homes still farther out.
Granted that the majority are able to last either to own or hire the modern house with all its improvements. While civilization has been improving our houses, it has not equally improved the men who are to inhabit them. It has created palaces, but it was not so easy to create noblemen and kings. And if the civilized man's pursuits are no worthier than the savage's, if he has employed the greater part of his life in obtaining gross necessaries and comforts merely, why should he have a better dwelling than the former? At present our houses are cluttered and defiled with it.
Spill wipers, tile wipers, chin wipers, smile wipers, pain wipers, pan wipers, pine wipers,
and a good housewife would sweep out the greater part into the dust hole, and not leave her morning's work undone.
A rainy day, floor mat, shoes away, wipe that, washes clean, in the kitchen, dishes,
morning's
dryers,
work.
pots, electric
By the
fryers,
blushes of Aurora and the music of Memnon, what should be man's morning work in this world?
Oh, Mother, have you taken a look at the morning?
I had 3 pieces of limestone on my desk, but I was terrified to find that they required to be dusted daily, when the furniture of my mind was all undusted still, and I threw them out the window in disgust. How then could I have a furnished house? I would rather sit in the open air, for no dust gathers on the grass unless where man has broken ground. It is the luxurious and dissipated who set the fashions which the herd so diligently follow. The traveler who stops at the best houses, so-called, soon discovers this, and if he resigned himself to their tender mercies, he would soon be completely emasculated. I think that in the railroad car we are inclined to spend more on luxury than on safety and convenience, and it threatens without attaining these to become no better than a modern drawing room with its divans and ottomans and sunshades and 100 other oriental things which we are taking west with us, invented for the ladies of the harem and the effeminate natives of the celestial empire. When I consider how our houses are built and paid for, or not paid for, and their internal economy managed and sustained,
we needed new homes, lots of them, and fast. They're cheaper by the dozen, by the 10 dozen. Pre-cut the lumber. Knock them together. Pre-cut the lumber. Put on the pressure. Knock them together.
I wonder that the floor does not give way under the visitor while he is admiring the gewgaws upon the mantelpiece, and let him through into the cellar to some solid and honest though earthy foundation. I cannot but perceive that this so-called rich and refined life is a thing jumped at, and I do not get on in the enjoyment of the fine arts which adorn it. The first question which I am tempted to put to the proprietor of such great impropriety is, who bolsters you? Are you one of the 97 who fail, or the 3 who succeed? Answer me these questions, and then perhaps I may look at your baubles and find them ornamental. The cart before the horse is neither beautiful nor useful. Before we can adorn our houses with beautiful objects, the walls must be stripped, and our lives must be stripped, and beautiful housekeeping and beautiful living be laid for a foundation. Now a taste for the beautiful is most cultivated out of doors, where there is no house and no housekeeper. I would rather sit on a pumpkin and have it all to myself than be crowded on a velvet cushion. I would rather ride on earth in an ox cart with a free circulation than go to heaven in a fancy car of an excursion train and breathe a malaria all the way. The very simplicity and nakedness of man's life in the primitive ages imply this advantage, at least that they left him still but a sojourner in nature. When he was refreshed with food and sleep, he contemplated his journey again. He dwelt, as it were, in a tent in this world, and was either threading the valleys, or crossing the plains, or climbing the mountaintops. But lo, men have become the tools of their tools. The man who independently plucked the fruits when he was hungry has become a farmer.
Another major problem of the central city is that many old areas around the core are decaying.
And he who stood under a tree for shelter, a housekeeper.
Here are the streets with the run-down flats, the vacant rooms, the rows of dreary houses.
We now no longer camp as for a night, but have settled down on earth and forgotten heaven.
Here live those who can't afford something better.
We have built for this world a family mansion, and for the next a family tomb. The best works of art are the expression of man's struggle to free himself from this condition, but the effect of our art is merely to make this low state comfortable, and that higher state to be forgotten.
Though most of us will never give up our modern lives and move out to some iconic shack in the woods, it's worth thinking about whether a system built up to provide for us has taken us over. Signing off for True Stream Media, I'm Aaron Dykes, and she's Melissa Melton.